An ex-American bomber base, a few sheds, was what they allocated us. And by the side of those sheds was where they stuck Phil Collins's team. So you had the Lotus people, you had a few Americans, and then you had Mike Lersby,
yes,
who Anthony knows very well. And I will digress slightly from that. Mike Lersby was technical director of Aston Martin, and as a purchasing team in Coventry, we had to introduce DeLorean to everybody, and we had a spiel, all the directors, and all the directors were well-known automotive people. And yeah, Mike Lersby with his technical directorship of Aston Martin, one of the guys was obviously getting bored one afternoon, and he actually said that, yes, and there's Mike Lersby, technical director of Aston Villa. We knew where he was going that night. Yeah. But it was a problem. Example, the suspension of the DeLorean was basically designed by a guy called Dr. Mike Foxton. Mike came to DeLorean from March Engineering, where he was development engineer for Formula 3 racing cars. 12 a year. His doctorate was in suspension design. Now, hey, building 12 a year, Mike was great. We were aiming for a few more than that. And the problems we had, Lotus could not in those days design anything with tolerances. And it was, and George Broomfield has been quoted as saying, it's fine, Lotus would fit with a hammer and a file. I don't know whether some of you might have taken your body panels off.
Yeah. Some can do.
Yeah. Have they got slots or holes?
Slots.
Right. They were designed to have holes. When they got on the track, they wouldn't fit, because Lotus had done their trick of no tolerances. So a late modification, slots. And we're always worried if they went round the test track and went over the speed hump, all the panels would drop like a skirt. But again, that was Lotus, and I think you have a view on Lotus.
Yes, I mean, it was true. I mean, obviously the guys from America came over to discuss it. I mean, one of my responsibilities included all after sales service, field problems, and developing the all documentation for car and workshop manual, parts book, the new handbook. I mean, if you look at the old handbook and the new handbook, you'll see that the first handbook that came out with the car, had a nice picture of a car drawn by the original designer, which is that picture there. But in fact, that car doesn't have a backbone chassis. That's an original. Well,
I saw that. I stopped it before it hit the wing.
It doesn't have. That's an ERM chassis, the original concept from Phil Collins. Quite different thing, but the first handbook was done before there were any cars, so it was quite a feat for the American guys to bring all that together. And when the first cars went over to America, it was a real disaster. And there were telexes, didn't have in there in those days, flashing backwards and forwards about the quality. And eventually I went over there, and there were hundreds of problems. I was looking at your cars out there, and I see some of them. One of the problems that they had was this problem with the door flexing and not hitting the latch properly. And they evolved a very expensive fix. It was a little cast stainless steel guide, which was, let's say, very expensive. Eventually, purchasing got a plastic one made, but that was a little problem. The first cars went over without any way of bringing the doors down. So John DeLorean was all right because he could reach up and pull the door down.
Not all of us are like that talented. Yeah.
So the first car, that was one of the first little fixes, which was done in America. A little strap with a ring in it, which enabled the average person to pull the door. The later cars had that rectified built in. But there were many problems, and virtually the Quality Assurance Centre in Santa Ana, which is near to Longbridge, where the cars came into, were virtually rebuilding those first 400 cars. I went over there and it was a nightmare. I got a real sort of ear bashing.
Because I think actually there is a copy of a TEDx here. It changed so much. This is a TEDx from Dick Brown to Don Lander, copied to Jay-Z and Gafiero, Bennington, Mike Kimberley, somebody from NIDA. Product evaluation. Now this was dated, oh it's American isn't it, it's back to front, 27th of January 1981. So that would have been one of the very first.
That would have been very first. Yes, that would have been. Yeah, first of not the full dispatch. Which wasn't until the end of January.
And this is where I think he was fooled.
Yeah.
He says, received the pilot production MBR 28 DeLorean and a chassis and drivetrain unit on Friday, January the 23rd. We've spent the last 3 days in rather intensive evaluation from the standpoint of technical features, appearance, appointments, and on-the-road handling characteristics. Recognising that you and your people are working feverishly on upgrading and or finalising a broad variety of componentry, all of which are quite manageable, poor disillusioned man. My personal feeling, as well as the feeling of all people at DMC California, is it's a winner. On behalf of all North American operation personnel, please accept my personal gratitude and congratulations for the exhausting efforts of all concerned. It's a job well done. From this point, quality of workmanship will be the most important criteria in the marketplace. And from what we've seen and heard so far, only the highest quality standards will prevail at the DMCL, for which we're most thankful. Now, I think obviously Dick Brown had seen a prototype, realised it was rough, and thought, by God, when he gets the real stuff, and I think, and I don't mean to be, let's say, when we started production, we didn't get it right. By the time we produced cars with grey trim, we got it right. Some of the very first black trim cars were awful. Dick Brown had... I mean, Dick Brown had made various... I mean, the fact that some of your cars, or most cars, don't have a fuel filler flap in the bonnet. That was a Dick Brown requirement, because you go through a car wash, the fuel filler flap came up. So you go through a car wash, you get out of the car and put it down. Americans don't like to do that sort of thing. But we got in Dunmurry very protective, and Barry Wills actually once saved me from getting the sack, because